Okay, so I talked about Zoro's future last week, so the obvious next step is to talk about Nami, right? I mean, it goes Nami, Zoro, and then the other Straw Hats. Has nothing to do with boobs. Absolutely none whatsoever. By the way, have you been playing Pokemon Sword and Shield, the Ice Gym Leader? Holy crap. I know, right? I know, right? I was surprised about that too. Like, wow. I mean, like, they're right there. It's just, okay, anyway, Alright, so anyway, yeah, Nami's future. Okay, so yeah, the Straw Hats that Oda had drawn in that SBS, older, age 40 and 60. We got Luffy, we got Zoro, we got Nami, and we got Usopp, okay? Like I said, I'm not really sure if he's gonna draw Robin and Frankie in that same style because Frankie's like 36, so drawing him like 4 years older is probably not gonna be that big of a deal. But you could bump it up for him. Maybe you could draw Frankie at age 50 and age 70. Brooke would be the most difficult of all. You'd have to draw him at like, hey, draw Brooke at age 110 and 130. I'd be like, okay, I guess. But no, we can talk about Nami because we got to see her here, and as you can see, time does not touch this woman, which, as we could figure, actually remarkably, at age 60, at least the hairstyle looks a lot like Shakky, doesn't it? Yeah, we're gonna get back to that. Now, this is gonna have to tackle this from a different angle than with Zoro's video. Obviously, Zoro is green and Nami is orange, so these are two completely different colors we're talking about here. But no, seriously, like, Zoro is a fighter, okay? He's one of the big three, strongest warriors aboard the Straw Hat crew, right? And he wants to become the greatest swordsman in the world, so there's a lot of stuff to tackle from that angle, how much stronger Zoro is going to get in the future. Is he going to learn hockey, conquerors, all that crap? So we had a lot of stuff to talk about with Zoro. Nami is not a frontline fighter kind of character, okay? So she can fight, and she, of course, would get stronger as her, training and, learning more about how weather patterns operate. And, I'm sure Usopp could start cranking out more and more upgrades to the clima attack. He's like, here you go, Nami, clima attack version 11.6. This one can shoot a hurricane out of the tip. I'd be like, woo, a whole hurricane. Yay, awesome. So yeah, pick up your new Climb Attacks, a version 11.6 today, on sale for, let's say, 486 million berries. How about that? All right, pretty good deal if you ask me, all right? So, oh my god, I just thought of something. Nami, all right, picture this. Nami becomes famous. I mean, she's already famous. I mean, yeah, she's stolen our hearts, but no. After the whole thing with Laugh Tale and everything, Straw Hats, Luffy becomes king of the pirates, the whole crew is going to become world famous. I mean, they already are, kind of, but even more so, right? You're gonna have people all over the world like, oh my god, I want to be just like Zoro. Oh my god, I want to be just like Nami. And Nami, noticing a prime marketing opportunity here, could ask Usopp to make replicas of her poles and, like, sell the, little toy miniature versions of the climb attacks to the public. So it's like, yeah, Nami would take full advantage of that. Nami would be like, yeah, I'm the navigator. I'm a cat burglar Nami. I'm the navigator of the Straw Hat crew that found the One Piece. Luffy's king of the pirates. He's my captain. I'm going to be signing autographs here at this convention center for, 10,000 berries an autograph, 50,000 if you want a picture. I could sell you my little miniature. She would take full advantage of that 100% because that's the kind of person she is, right? So that would be kind of funny. But no, yeah. So you're going to have upgrades to the climb attack and all stuff like that, but she's not a fighter. So I don't really see Nami. I mean, it's possible she could gain observation hockey because, her being a great navigator, sensing weather patterns and everything. If it was going to be a hockey that she was going to be, like what would her expertise be in? It would definitely be observation. Conquerors, I don't see that. Maybe with only people that find her sexually attractive, could she attain conquerors on that level comparable to like Katakuri and Luffy and everything like that. But no, obviously. So I had to take this a different angle. Like, okay, what other way could we see Nami's character, changing, or what better yet, like what happens after the events of, One Piece, the story, after they find, the treasure, what is she going to do? All right, here's a few things I want you to think about here, okay? Fishman and human relations. Okay? Think about this. All right. So right now you got the Tenryubito that are, just extremely prejudicial to fishmen and just completely like they're enslaving them pretty much. So after the events of One Piece, after you have Dragon show up and, do his revolution, the Tenryubito are gonna fall, and it's gonna probably usher in this whole new golden age, for the world, where, finally Fishman and merfolk can live on the surface with humans in perfect harmony, because the Tenryubito aren't around to screw this up anymore. But as you could probably figure, with decades and centuries of the world government, basically instilling fear into the population, I mean, you can imagine the kind of stuff that the world government would spread to the world. It's like, oh, yeah, Fishmen, they're very dangerous. You got to watch out for them, right? Look at that guy. Look what Arlong did, and look what Hordy did, So there's probably a lot of people in the One Piece world that just don't know a lot about, Fishmen and merfolk and stuff, so they might be just afraid of them just because of their appearances, right? So I could see characters at that point like Jinbei, of course, Koala, and Nami kind of like following in the footsteps of Otohime a little bit and trying to better the, societal merger there, because the fishmen are like, they've lived on their island in the bottom of the ocean for years. So now it's going to be a little bit of maybe of a culture shock for them to come to the surface and live on the surface. Also, there's that whole prophecy that Fishman Island's going to be destroyed by Luffy. I don't think Madame Charlie was wrong about that. It's just the context she got wrong, and I made a video about that. I think through the actions of Luffy, it might not be Luffy directly, but because of like the indirect actions that Luffy takes, Fishman Island does indeed get destroyed, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it is, because you're losing your ancestral homeland and everything like that, but it is, to usher in a new age. Basically, Marie Joie and, the entire Red Line collapses, crushes Fishman Island underneath it, so that island's gone, but afterwards you can kind of build a whole new settlement, and Fishman merfolk can live on the surface alongside humans and minks and all the other, species. They live together in harmony, because you don't have the Tenryubito screwing everything up with the whole slavery thing anymore. But yeah, I could see Nami being perfect for that role, because the forgiveness that she, gave Hachi, because that was a whole thing at Sabaody there, where Hachi sees Nami again, and he's kind of nervous, like, oh, how does she feel about me right now? Okay. Arlong and me and Karubi and Chu and our entire crew kind of were responsible for the death of her foster mother and enslaved her entire village for like over a decade. Here's some takoyaki, Nami. How do you feel about that? But Nami forgave Hachi, because I think she always could see, like, he wasn't the problematic person here. That was Arlong 100%, right? So yeah, Nami giving out forgiveness to Arlong, though, that would be a whole other thing. But I think considering, Koala and Nami and the similarities they have and how they were raised and how that involved Fishman in different ways, and Jinbei, of course, following in the legacy of Fisher Tiger, and Otohime as well, I think those characters would be really good for that role there. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a possibility. Also, connecting back to Kokoyashi, I mean, sure, the island has been saved from Arlong and everything, but it's still just a tiny little village in the east. I could see Nami, after, she leaves the crew and goes back to her home island, taking a lot of the treasure she has, and this really kind of heartwarming moment where it's like Nami ransacks Laugh Tale, steals all this treasure, like more berries than you could possibly imagine, but instead she uses a big chunk of that to improve the livelihood of the people living in her village and around in the islands that she grew up on. Okay, and I could kind of see that. I could even see, like, in her later years, maybe establishing some kind of orphanage or something, and she names the orphanage after her mother, Bellamere, or something like that, where she says, we saw that in Punk Hazard. She's very compassionate toward the plights of children. And this was actually even brought up later in SBS, where Nami is always very curt and very, she just beats down Caesar as best as she can in every single situation, okay, where no matter what Caesar's trying to do, or just like, poor me, Nami just doesn't give a crap, just never does. And somebody left an SBS question to Oda, like, why is Nami always so mean to Caesar? And Oda's response to it was basically like, please go back and read Punk Hazard. Please go back and read it, because it's like Nami has every right in the universe to hate on Caesar after he experimented on kidnapped children with illicit drugs, which they might be able to come back from because they're at Vegapunk. If anybody could figure out a cure for, like, Mocha and everybody, it would be Vegapunk, but they might never be able to go back to the way they were, and that's totally Caesar's fault. So Nami will never forgive Caesar. Probably never. I can't even see a situation like even if the kids are perfectly healed and fine, Caesar's still messed up, right? And by the way, to just kind of expand on that a little bit, Caesar never really did repent for what he did he? He felt like it's like, oh, poor me, I did all this horrible stuff at Punk Hazard. Now I have my heart stolen by the Straw Hats, and now I'm in lead of Big Mom's pissed off at me, and Beijing stole my heart, and man, this sucks to be me. He feels upset for what all the crazy stuff that happened to him and everything. He's like, man, I don't deserve this, but he never actually sits down and thinks, man, I feel genuine guilt and I'm really sorry for all the horrible things I did. Caesar never really did that, did he? And he went off on his interesting adventure. I don't know where he's going to be at. I really hope it might be after this cover story with Beiji and Lola and Chiffon right now, but after this cover series, I could totally see a Caesar one. And I would like it to take the point where at least Caesar does feel sorry for what he did. Not saying that, like, everybody has to forgive him. It's kind of like an Endeavor thing from My Hero Academia. It's just like Endeavor is trying to improve himself to be a better person, right? That doesn't mean you have to forgive him. That doesn't mean his family has to forgive him, but at least he is trying to not be as scummy as he used to be. Maybe something similar to Caesar could happen where he sees maybe the devastation that he's caused in the world and wants to improve himself and, seeks forgiveness. That would be kind of cool for a cover page. All right, I'm sorry. I went off on a tangent about Caesar there, but that was an interesting, comparison there I wanted to make, and also bringing up the whole thing with Nami being very compassionate to children and everything, and we saw that at the end of Punk Hazard. She was hanging out with the kids and having a nice meal, okay? So I could see that in her later years. Of course, she's always depicted as somebody that loves money, and she does. She loves money, but, now that she's been freed from, the clutches of Arlong, it's not the only thing she cares about. Back during East Blue, when she first met Luffy and Zoro and everybody, all she cared about was like, okay, I need to rob them, steal as much of their money as possible to bring it back to Kokoyashi, because she was laser focused on that. Not because she was greedy just for the sake of being greedy. It was because she spent most of her childhood and pretty much her entire teenage life in service to Arlong with this dream. This, like, Arlong has like a fishing pole with a piece of meat hanging off of it, and Nami has to keep like trying to grab it, where she's just like, if I can just get enough berries, if I can get 100 million, I will eventually free my village. That's, I think, where a lot of that greed, that aspect of her character comes from. Not because she wanted money just to have it, but she wanted money because it's like she needed it, and she's been, chasing after it for so long. But of course, she cares more about her friends and her family, like Nojiko and everybody, and Genzo. Genzo's not really her family. Nojiko technically isn't either, but you know what I mean. Like, family is what you make, not just from blood. So, if that was the situation, she would gladly give up as much money as she would have to in order to make sure her friends are safe and everything like that. I know, like, if it was a situation, like I said, where they arrive at Laugh Tale and there's no treasure whatsoever, Nami would be the one that would probably be the most upset about that. But at the end of the day, I don't think she would still be with her friends, and she'd be like, okay, well, I'm pretty pissed that there was no treasure here. There's no gold and no diamonds. Like, everyone's like, Nami, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, the real adventure was meeting all of you. No, genuinely, I do mean that. She does mean that. It would just be, it would be conflicting for her a little bit there. But, so yeah. Now, let's take a look at the actual drawings that Oda does here. Okay, so once again, same thing with the other one, same thing with Zoro. You had 40 and 60 in a universe where everything goes perfect, and the space-time continuum apparently freezes around her body, localized, and then a universe where things don't go as planned exactly. Some things go wrong, age 40 and 60. Okay, so at age 40, you just have Nami. They're basically just different hairstyles. Her hair's a little shorter from where it is now, so kind of like a mid-length. In the earlier parts of the story, she had relatively short hair, like shoulder-length hair, and now she has like way longer hair, reaches down to her back. Here, it's hair that's like a little bit in the middle. It's a little bit more wavy there. And what she's saying is like, come back when you're a little older there, so I guess the impression here is maybe some younger guys are hitting on her in this panel, and she's looking at them like, oh, they're just a bunch of little kids, little boys. Yeah, you're how old are you, dear? 22. Oh, come back when you're a little bit more of an adult, and then maybe we'll talk. That's kind of the impression I get from that one there. And then at age 60, rocking the Shakky hair, she's like, oh, my 40s? Oh, I left them a long time ago. I would imagine this is an encounter from like, oh, you don't look like a day older 40 there, Nami. And Nami's like, oh, my 40s. Well, thank you, but I left my 40s a while ago. Like, she's kind of arrogant in the sense of like, yeah, I know, I'm 65 years old, I'm still as hot as the day I was 21, I get it, yeah, I'm awesome. You know, she gets it, so there's a little bit of arrogance there, but what, it's Nami, whatever. Okay, and then, okay, so let me talk about the comparison to Shakky there, alright? So, number one I wanted to bring up, yeah, it does appear that Nami's gonna look like, have a body of Shakky when she's older, which, if you've seen Shakky, I mean, yeah, but that also kind of implies that when Shakky was younger, she looked more like Nami does now, right? And that just makes me more interested in Shakky's backstory, especially since she was tied to the Rocks crew in some way. Remember when she was telling this to the Straw Hats, she was like, oh yeah, 40 years ago, or around 40 years ago, Garp would chase me around because I used to be a pirate, but I gave up the pirate life back then. I gave up the pirate life like 40 years ago. Now, if she was being literal here, with like 40 years being the exact year, this was before the 2-year time skip, so that would have been 42 years ago before the current storyline. She decided to give up on being a pirate and left the Rocks crew. This was 4 years before the God Valley incident, and the Rocks crew was, devastated by Roger and Garp, and they all went their separate ways. Rocks apparently died. Long before, like 4 years before that all happened, Shakky in her 20s decided, I'm done with the pirating life, I'm just gonna go and do my own thing. I'm gonna set up a bar at Sabaody, I guess, you know? So, she might have not have been literal with that. She might have just been like, oh, around 40 years ago. I don't keep track of the years, but around 40 years ago, I left, you know? So it could have been at the God Valley incident for you know, that reason there. And then, of course, she would have fought Rayleigh a bunch of times on the Roger crew. They would have been enemies, and then a few years, maybe a decade or so after the crew's disbanded, you know, Roger dies, he gets executed. A few years after that, Shakky and Rayleigh meet each other at Sabaody maybe, and they get together, and they're basically married, because the way that Shakky calls Rayleigh is like person of my household in Japanese, and that's a term you usually only use for your spouse. So yeah, they're basically, did they get married in like a church? Like probably not, but they're married like common law married, kind of how it goes. Like they live together, and that's just how it goes there. But right, yeah, so that's how that goes, and I would like to see maybe if Shakky was a frontline fighter, because she seemed to imply that be the case. Like, oh yeah, Garp chased me around when I was a pirate. So yeah, she was probably pretty strong in her own right. So now, let's talk about the dimension where things don't go as well as that. Okay, so you see Nami at age 40 here, looking a little bit more rough, a little bit more lines in the face. She's got a band-aid there, and she's just like, hey, fork over the money, bring it on. This reminds me, working in retail for 7 years, this reminds me of a few customers we used to have. There was one particular lady, used to come in a lot in Dollar Tree. When I first few years I worked there, she came in all the time, and she stopped coming in after a certain point. She was an older lady, probably like in her 60s. Her hair was like super frizzled, like all the time, like she never washed it. Her hair was always constantly frizzled up. And what she would do, her and her husband would both do this. They would come into the store, buy a bunch of stuff, and then like a week later they would return it for other stuff. Because at Dollar Tree, we don't give you your money back, we just exchange stuff for other stuff, and she would do this constantly. Buy stuff, bring it home, bring it back, buy stuff, bring it home, bring it back, and just exchange it for constantly other stuff. Don't know. And every time she brought the stuff back, it would always be filthy. Like, I think one day she was trying to return, like, the shower curtains or shower rings or whatever, and she handed us a bag that was just dripping with brown water, and like, I'd like to exchange these. I'm like, okay, I need like a level 5 hazmat suit here, but she would never take no for an answer. Like, ma'am, I don't think we can return this. It's like, no, you need to return. I need to do an exchange here. This is ridiculous. She would like draw on a big huff. So that's kind of what Nami reminds me of in this dimension of like where things didn't go good. She'd be the one at the store like, hey, I want to return this. I want my money back right now. I want to see your manager. I'm not taking no for an answer. I'm not leaving this store until I get my money back. And I've had to deal with those people quite a few times, in fact. So I'm like, okay, Okay, sure, right. I'll just call the manager up here. Yep. All right. So that's that kind of roughness, and then you get to age 60. I was gonna say level 60. Playing too much Pokemon. You get to age 60 here for Nami, and she's a little bit heavier here, and smoking a cigarette, and just kind of, I would imagine, in a much more raspy voice in her old age when she took up smoking at some point, like, "Hey there, yeah, you wanna come over here and sell my magic pot? Magical pot." Magic. Okay, you could take this in a few different ways. Yeah. Now, in one context, you could take this to mean like Nami at age 60 in this, bad universe is basically just selling a bunch of random crap she dug out of her basement, but she's selling it for an exorbitant amount of money. Like, oh yeah, see, that pot right there was used by Whitebeard. Yeah, that was Whitebeard's personal chili pot. He made his world-famous chili in that pot. I'm gonna say, 800 million berries for that pot. And it's just a random thing you just drag as, oh yeah, that random pillow that looks all raggedy and, whatever, that was the pillow of Dark King Rayleigh. Yep. 300 billion berries. Like, that's one context you could take it. Other context you could take it is like, let's go down to that old lady there down by the pier. She lives in that shack, but the stuff she sells is primo. Other context you could take that. So yeah, all of those are interesting though, if nothing else. All of them are interesting scenarios. But yeah, I would imagine in her older age, she would also develop just more knowledge about, like, the weather. Like, right now, Nami can basically just walk outside, aboard the Sunny, and she could just basically just, like, massive typhoon coming from 10 o'clock. We need to get out of here, But I'd like to think in her older age, she would master it to the point of, like, it really is observation hockey, but, like, specifically with the weather, where she would be able to lock it down and pinpoint it exactly, like, more accurate than any weatherman or meteorologist from our world, period. She would be able to walk out and she'd be able to tell you, like, all right, it's going to hail from, like, 11:30 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. After that, it's going to be sunny for 2 hours. After that, it's going to be a massive windstorm, so we need to make sure, like, she'd be able to do stuff like that. Like, how Dr. Kureha, when we first met her and she was, like, diagnosing Nami after, she got the sickness from that Kestia, Dr. Kureha, like, took her finger and just, like, put it to Nami's forehead. No, Nami! Just put it to Nami's forehead like that, and she was able to read her temperature, like, accurately, like, without a thermometer. Kind of something like that with Nami, where she would be able to sense the weather absolutely perfectly. She could walk outside and she could be like, the barometric pressure is this, the humidity is this, the temperature is this, and the temperature is exactly 99.6 degrees Fahrenheit out here right now, or I guess what would that be in Celsius? 32.4 degrees Celsius, locking in, right? Or maybe 36 degrees, 0.4 Celsius. Let's lock in with that, is around 90. I don't know. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff she'd be able to do in her older age, and, like, adapting to, like, her skills right now, like as a navigator. And then, with her clima tact, I would like to think she would still have Zeus at that point. Like, she just never gave Zeus back. Very Nami thing to do. Like, no, Zeus, you're mine now until death do us part, Zeus-chan. But yeah, obviously maybe she would even at that point, like, because you have Usopp right now developing the climate tact. I'm sure the sorcerers, the weather wizards at Weather Area were part of making the sorcery climate tact. But maybe as she gets older, she just learns all the mechanisms of the climate tact and how it works herself. So she doesn't need Usopp to make her a brand new one. She can, like, learn it to the point, like, when she's 40 years old, she can just make and modify her own climate tact at that point. She's not a straight up fighter, so I don't see her being like, yeah, in her older age, Nami's gonna hit the gym, she's gonna be buff as hell, and she's just gonna, like, boom, beat the crap out of everyone that comes up to her. I don't see her doing that, but who knows? Well, there's fan art of that out there too. So, yes, I would like to just end this video by saying let's all have a great Nami Appreciation Day, because she's worth appreciating, absolutely. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking101 signing out. Bye, everyone.